Welcome to the Mining and Metallurgical Society of America webinar series. MMSA is an association of senior industry professionals who conduct themselves and their work to the highest standards. The society only accepts applicants who have been educated, trained, and experienced in the mining industry for at least 10 years and who have been referred by colleagues and industry peers. Once a member, a professional may apply to be a qualified person with the earned expertise in one or more defined professions from specified and extended work in the industry. If you are interested in becoming an MMSA member, please be sure to check out our website at mmsa.net for information on the application process. The Society is dedicated to increasing public awareness and understanding about mining and why mined materials are essential to modern society and human well-being. The Society concerns itself with fundamental principles and with problems facing the industry in such areas as legislation, economics, and education, as well as environmental concerns, labor relations, and health and safety. Representatives of the Society from time to time testify before legislative bodies and provide advice to federal agencies. The MMSA provides continuous professional development opportunities for its members through the QP webinar series. The series provides subject matter expert lectures on a wide range of mining topics and is presented most months of the year. I am Kristen Guerin-Davy, MMSA member and social media and webinar director. I'll be introducing the webinar today. The title of today's webinar is The Proposed Revisions to NI 43-101 by Victoria Yale, BC Securities Commission Manager, Mining. Questions can be entered into the chat. The speaker will answer the questions after the presentation is completed. Please turn off your cameras unless you are asking a question. And I'll hand it over to Curtis.
Thank you, Kristen, and welcome everyone. Victoria Yale is the manager mining at the BC Securities Commission after joining as a senior geologist in 2016. Prior to that, Victoria spent over 20 years with a senior tier mining company. Her experience in the exploration and mining industry is global, covering the full range of exploration, production, and business development involving multiple commodities. She holds a Bachelor of Science in Geology from the University of Toronto, a Master of Science in Geology from Queen's University, and a graduate diploma in Business Administration with a focus on mining from Simon Fraser University in Vancouver. Victoria is also a registered professional geoscientist with the Engineers and Geoscientists of British Columbia. Victoria, we're very pleased to host your address today, and we're eager to stay attuned to the updates planned for the instrument. Over to you.
Thank you both, Kristen and Curtis. It's a pleasure to be back again. This is one of the favorite presentations that I get invited to, often has the most engagement. My presentation today isn't tremendously long, and there should be ample time for questions, and I'm happy to take them. And as Kristen says, please enter them in the chat, and we'll do our best to get to all of them. But my email address is on the end slide, and you're welcome to reach out to me at any time. We do the standard terms of use. These are my opinions, not necessarily the opinions of the British Columbia Securities Commission or the Canadian Securities Administrators. And if you'd like to borrow slides or anything like that, please let us know. We're happy to share them with you. We just like to know where they end up. What we're going to talk about today is I'm going to go over a little bit of National Instrument 43-101 background. I know many of you on the webinar today are familiar, but I'll just revisit some of that. Some of the proposed changes that we've published for comment. The comment period closed last Friday. We tried to get this in earlier. It just wasn't possible, but we're still talking to people about their viewpoints and their concerns or their kudos on the proposed changes, and we'll be working through those over the course of the next some months. And I will tell you sort of what we've seen to date and where we're at since last Friday. Why National Instrument 43-101, the standards of disclosure for mineral projects matter. There's about 2,800 global companies involved in exploration, mining, and development, and around the world. And of those, about 1,900 and change report under National Instrument 43-101. So they make their disclosure following these standards. It's the largest, our biggest competitor after, if you want to call it a competitor, after National Instrument 43101 is JORC, the JORC code in Australia. But it's a little bit different than the JORC code. Both National Instrument 43101 and SK 1300 in the US are part of securities law. Things like JORC, PERC, SAMREC, some of the other codes around the globe are all either exchange policy or association policy. So they don't have quite the same effect, although everybody gets held to a standard no matter where they're reporting about their mineral project. Just a little bit of background for those of you who may not be familiar or may have forgotten. Unlike the UK or the United States, we do not have one federal or national securities body in Canada. We have the 13 various provincial and territorial organizations. They report to the individual province or territory governments. They're, for the most part, self funded, which means we don't take taxpayer dollars. And most companies that report here have what's referred to as a principal regulator. And that's based on where the head office location is or significant ties to that jurisdiction. So if you're based in Vancouver as an exploration company, like I am based in Vancouver, your head office would be here and you would report through the British Columbia Securities Commission. The main regulators for mining in Canada are British Columbia and Ontario, with about 1,600 of those 1,900 companies. And then we have 60 to 70 issuers reporting in the provinces of Alberta and Quebec. I noticed that one of the members of Alberta's Energy Group, which is formerly known as the Oil and Gas Group, she's on the call today. And so she regulates some of the things going through the province of Alberta. What we refer to as the Canadian Securities Administrators is the umbrella organization that brings all of these bodies together, and this coordinates and harmonizes how we create national instruments such as 43101. For those of you who want to know why we're talking about this and what the objectives are, it's very clear and it's not always what people think it is. The objectives of 43101 is to take what we all love to talk about, which is exploration, geology, and mining. We all want that to talk about that amongst ourselves. But the object of National Instrument 43101 is to take away some of the jargon that we use and to provide the public, sometimes referred to as the investing public, consistent, comparable, and decision useful information to make investment decisions in either mining or exploration companies. This also supports public confidence in the mineral industries and supports the capital markets. It's very simply a disclosure of information about mineral projects, and it should be balanced, reliable, understandable, standardized, and prepared by a qualified person. We've added a little misconception box here. There's a lot of things going around these days that suggest that National Instrument 43101 certifies or approves or endorses disclosure about mineral projects. That's not what it's about. It is literally information for the public so that they can understand the mineral projects that we all fall in love with. A little bit of history of 43101 may be controversial for some people. It was first adopted in 2001. It was not a result of the BRIEX scandal. However, the Mining Standards Task Force, which produced a report in late 1999, was a result of the BRIEX scandal and informed the development of National Instrument 43101. But National Instrument 43101 came out of some national policies that we had, primarily based in Ontario, that were developed in the early 1970s. And if you're interested, the first technical report type document was filed with the Ontario Securities Commission in the late 1950s. So it took a long time to codify 43101 into law, and it definitely does have influences from the BRIEX scandal. We've then had two large revisions. There's been incremental revisions over the years when there's been changes in other national instruments, but we had the first one in 2005, and that updated the technical report form, the Form 43101F1, and then we had a much larger revision in 2011, and it had significant changes to the form again, and it clarified some of the disclosure requirements, and poor disclosure with respect to preliminary economic assessments resulted in what we refer to as a Canadian Securities Administrators CSA staff notice, giving the industry more information on how to make disclosure at the PEA level. This third proposed revision, nothing's carved in stone yet. We published for comment back in February as an information draft ahead of the PDAC conference in Toronto in early March. And then we had to get some further approvals and work done before we could publish as the Canadian Securities Administrators as a whole. And we did that on June the 12th. And we had a comment period that was open until last Friday. And right at the moment, it looks like we're going to end up with about 100 comment letters in various forms submitted during that time from June the 12th to October the 10th. There are three parts to National Instrument 43101. Two parts are law and one part is guidance. Those are on the top section of this slide. National Instrument 43101 itself is law, as is the format of a technical report. We also provide guidance in the companion policy, which is how we would interpret or apply those sections of the national instrument and the form. We also have help from what we consider our industry practice standard setter here in Canada, the Canadian Institute of Mining, Metallurgy and Petroleum, otherwise known as CIM. I'm sure most of you are familiar. And CIM is the Canadian member of CRISCO. So CRISCO sets the international standards and the definitions that we all know and love: mineral resources, mineral reserves, and the various study types. And CIM adapts those CRISCO definitions, and those are incorporated by reference into National Instrument 43101. CIM, similar to MMSA, similar to SME, also provides practice documents, practice guidelines, standards that we can all use when we're doing our day-to-day work. The core principles, because National Instrument 43101 is a principle-based disclosure standard, the core principles or the pillars are seen by us, the regulators, as the qualified person, the definition standards that I just spoke to, and the technical report itself, which is a document that summarizes milestones. It's a little bit different than SK 1300 if you're thinking in that regard. SK 1300 is either an annual review or an annual reporting, whereas a technical report here, as opposed to the SK 1300 technical report summary, ours is milestone driven, and whereas the SK 1300 is more periodic disclosure. Curtis mentioned before that everyone likes the stats that I tend to share in my presentations. These are over the last 25 years, the number of technical reports that have been filed in Canada on what was formerly known as CDAR, a System for Electronic Disclosure and Retrieval. Dissemination and retrieval. I always get the acronym wrong. It's now known as CDAR Plus because it was revamped a few years ago. But there's about 20,000 technical reports filed documenting milestones. The 2025 number is already out of date. I did this slide last week. I updated it, and we're now at about 437 technical reports filed so far in this calendar year. As I said, we published for comment the proposed revisions on June the 12th. The document on the left of the screen is literally a screenshot of what we put out in the public forum. It's still available on any of the Commission's websites or through the Canadian Securities Administrators Secretariat portal. And these include revisions to the instrument, to the form, and to the companion policy. There were also disclosed consequential amendments to other rules. Some people may have heard of National Instrument 51102. That's continuous disclosure, so sort of like a SK 1300, more periodic disclosures that companies have to make on a regular basis, as opposed to just the milestone driven technical reports. And the Ontario Securities Commission did a cost benefit analysis of these proposed revisions as it applies to the companies that report there. It is more broadly applicable to all companies, but it is specific to Ontario. The goals of this revision, and I'm going to start by saying when we undertook what we've been working on since 2022, and there's a summary of this process at the end of the presentation, we looked at disclosure by companies of all sizes, of all stages of development, of all stages of exploration, and we said, you know what? For the most part, the industry is doing a good job. But are there things that we need to improve? And we did put out a consultation paper with 38 questions in that regard in 2025 or in 2022. And we received about 85 responses. But we looked at those and we looked at our general premise that we thought the industry was doing a good job. And the responses to our consultation paper suggested the same thing. But we did find there were areas that we could make some clarifications. We could modernize the instrument itself and the form. We could do some more alignment around the world with the various codes, including with SK 1300. And we wanted Canada to maintain that leadership role where more than 60% of companies around the world report under National Instrument 43101. It has a different look if you go to the website, and I believe I've thrown it in at the end. If I haven't, I'll throw it in the chat for you before we finish the call. It has a very different look. We've had some changes to the way that the Canadian Securities Administrators conduct legal drafting. I'm not a lawyer. I'm just a simple geologist, but there's been some changes to the way legal language is disclosed in these national instruments, and there's been a significant change to the numbering methodology. Instead of having parts and subparts, it's now consecutive numbering no matter what part it's in. So part 1 may contain sections 1, 2, 3, and 4, and part 2 would then pick up at 4, 5, 6, and 7. So it looks a little bit different, and this has thrown some people, but this is what we have to do, and it actually has helped us a little bit. When we had the 2 previous revisions, we bolted new parts and sections on to the existing rule, so things didn't necessarily flow in the order that people might make disclosure. So with the numbering changes, we took the opportunity to reorder things a little bit. Compliments to one of my colleagues in Ontario who put together these charts. I'm happy to send Kristen, Curtis, any of the folks at MMSA a copy of the presentation so you can share this. These 2 slides, I'll just go back and forth a little bit. On the left are the proposed revisions and the new numberings, but they map back to what really is the last major change, the 2011, even though if you go and look on the websites, it says it's 2023. That was an incremental change, but it'll map it back from the instrument that's currently in force right now. So these are 2 helpful slides, and again, I'll share the slide deck, and people can make that available. We do have some updated definitions from the CRISCO codes and their definition standards. CIM has provided us with 3 new definitions incorporated by reference. Exploration target, which replaces in the current instrument target for further exploration. Scoping study, which replaces in the current instrument PEA. And there's a new study type added, which is the life of mine plan, which is a study type for mineral projects primarily in production. Other definition changes, if you look at the current instrument, we have interchangeably used the words project and property. We thought that was a little bit confusing and that the national instrument is about mineral projects. So we clarified and landed on the use of one single term. We've removed the distinction between early stage exploration properties and advanced properties. We've reduced the number of items that you need to disclose at a minimum in the technical report form. And we removed foreign codes as the CIM definition standards align with CRISCO. And the last major location to come in line with the CRISCO definition standards, of course, was the United States with their adoption of SK 1300 as of January 1st, 2021. So all of the largest jurisdictions, and I'm told by the folks at Crisco, it's now greater than 85% of the world uses the same definitions for mineral resources, mineral reserves, and study types. And so we didn't need to have the allowance to report under foreign code, which was unique to National Instrument 43101. One of the comment letters from Crisco says that exact thing. So maybe we got that right. We've also relocated and consolidated data verification into Section 11 rather than being broken up in the 1.1 definitions and Section 3.2 as it currently is. And we've updated the producing issuer revenue thresholds. They had not been adjusted in over 2 decades. And so there's been some inflation and changes there. The qualified person definition, we've clarified that that's 5 years of experience after your registration. We've removed, and this is all based on the Canadian rules. And then we've made foreign professionals they've been balanced or rebalanced to be equivalent to Canadian standards. And then we've also allowed for jurisdictions where there is no requirement or no association to be professionally registered with. You can present to the public in a certificate associated with a technical report how your professional level experience is equivalent. Um, Up here, we had previously said that your university degree requirements required you to have a degree in a discipline of mining or geoscience related to property development. That was an overlap with the professional associations that we have here in Canada. So we've removed that. I think that's the same with all of the foreign professional associations that we recognize. We've clarified the experience relative to the subject matter of the mineral project, maybe a little bit broader than Crisco permits. We hope that we're giving room and flexibility there. And as I said, we've rebalanced the requirements for Canadians and foreign professionals to act as a qualified person. Technical report triggers, we've removed technical report triggers, a few that just weren't being utilized. We've also removed the requirement for royalty only issuers to file technical reports. There was an exemption available to royalty issuers where they filed a modified technical report because often a royalty only issuer has no access to the project, has no access to the data, and things like that. And those technical reports weren't really providing a lot of value to the public who may be using these to make their investment decisions. Other revisions, we've clarified that all technical disclosure on mineral projects must be prepared and approved by a QP. That's primarily in voluntary disclosure. This would be in news releases, this would be in websites, this would be in other social media aspects, and that's generally being done now. We don't see this as a shift or burden because we don't see people on their website saying, here's my flagship property, but we also have 6 other properties. Their flagship property is, of course, material to them, and that's the only one that requires technical reporting, our material projects, but they're also making disclosure about 4 or 5 other projects that are either not being worked on right now, are less advanced, or aren't seeing the importance that the company places on them. So they're making that disclosure on their website, and they're not saying a qualified person hasn't signed off on those other properties. They're saying that a qualified person has signed off on all the disclosure. And we think that's something that the public has come to expect. and people are doing it anyway. One of the things that has aligned us more closely to, say, the JORC standards is we've removed the restriction on adding inferred mineral resources to other categories. We see so commonly M plus I, measured plus indicated plus inferred. And if the categories remain disclosed separately, we don't see that there's a problem with continuing and removing the restriction to allow for the disclosure of M plus I plus I. We've clarified the disclosure of equivalent grades must include metal recoveries for the metals that are included in that equivalent grade. This was something that people did really, really well for a very long time, and it was actually less specific in the rule, and people seem to have forgot. So we're just adding that one back. We've removed the allowance for the deferral of a current personal inspection. There was an allowance that you could not do a or one QP could not do a current personal inspection and defer that until such time. And it was based on weather and weather only. And we didn't see that that seasonal deferral was being used or being applied correctly. So we've removed that allowance. We've talked to Indigenous peoples, rights holders, and permitting. In item 20, some of you may be familiar in the technical report form. We've clarified that rights holders of a mineral projects do include Indigenous peoples. We've extended the disclosure in item 4 to include the dates and required permits and agreements with rights holders. Nothing more than that. We're not talking about the details. And we hope in item 20, we've extended the potential shelf life of a technical report by reducing the disclosure of a list of permits, a list of agreements, and a list of anything else to advance the project, government related environmental studies, agreements with rights holders, because these are available from other bodies other than on CEDAR Plus, other than under securities law. And if the public or the investing public or anyone else wants to go and review an environmental study, they would then know what the date of that study was. So if it was a technical report that was 2 or 3 years old, you could know that maybe that was updated and where that environmental study or where the conditions of those permits are actually found. And you can go and look those up yourself if you so choose. As I talked about, we've relocated data verification, and in the technical report under item 12, we've clarified that the disclosure of data verification is required for more than two things that people have assumed. The mineral resource estimated database, some people thought data verification was only limited to that, and that was a misinterpretation. And others thought that data verification only applied to items 9 and items 10, exploration results and drilling results. There are other technical data in a technical report, such as metallurgy, mineral resources, mineral reserves, mining methods, etc., that may need the qualified person to have performed a data verification on that information. The level of data verification remains entirely up to the qualified person. It's how you practice. National Instrument 43101 and its form do not tell you how to do the work in any way, nor is that the intent. It tells you how to disclose the work that you've done on a mineral project. So the basic three parts of data verification remain entirely the same. One, what steps as the qualified person authoring a technical report did you take? If you're reviewing and approving disclosure. Two, did you transcribe, aka copy and paste the information accurately? And the third part, if you couldn't do one of the first two, was there a limitation, and what was that limitation? Some people have told us there was a flood. All the core logs, all the assay certs, if they were paper, were destroyed in a flood. That would be a limitation to conducting data verification. And that's all that's required. But those steps that you take as a qualified person authoring a technical report, they remain entirely up to you. We haven't told you what they should be, nor is that our intent to do so. It's entirely how you practice professionally, and that's entirely up to you. Mineral resources, we published another CSA staff notice in 2020, just before the pandemic, I believe, that talked about some of the things that we weren't seeing disclosed in mineral resources in technical reports and in general. So we've clarified those requirements to include some of those things. And this is on feedback from our advisory panels, from CIM, from many groups over the last 15 years since our last major update. We've also clarified that statements about project specific risks and uncertainties are not just general boilerplate risks and uncertainties, but project specific ones. We've clarified capital and updating operating cost requirements. This is one of the shortest items, or it was one of the shortest items in the Form 43101 F1. So we've clarified those that disclosure, and we extended the disclosure to specifically include cost estimations and cost estimate classifications if you used one. If you didn't, you don't have to disclose it. It's as it applies in that section. Economic analysis, we clarified the disclosures again, pre and post tax. Doesn't matter where you are, there's taxes everywhere. Hey, less in the United States, very popular. There's a lot of Canadian taxes here. We've also clarified that discounted cash flow forecasts should have risk adjusted discount rates that reflect the location of the project, maybe the stage of development, maybe the commodity, and the current economic conditions. I checked just before this presentation. Gold is hanging in there at $4,250 an ounce. Unbelievable. Current personal inspection, there's been no changes to what's expected in a current personal inspection. That's also up to the qualified person, and they should look at the environments. But we removed adjacent properties in item 23. We saw a lot of promotional disclosure. We saw technical reports that were primarily based on what had happened on a neighboring project as opposed to what happened on the actual mineral project. And when we got the results of the consultation paper feedback, one of the things that we found was the most important thing that industry, the public, and interested groups saw is that current personal inspection. We like to refer to it as the boots on the ground. Remains one of the most important aspects of a technical report and its associated disclosure. It was buried previously in item 2D of the introduction section. So now there's all the room in the world as current personal inspection has been replaced adjacent properties in item 23. If you still want to talk about a neighboring property, you can do so. If it's a deposit analog or a similar setting, you can do that under item 7 of the technical report. Additional guidance, this is one of my favorite parts. For the first time ever, what we've done in the companion policy is we've added guidance on the technical report form. We've never had it before. It was just on the instrument. Now there's a whole second section. It's not quite a second half, but this is really the only add. We've added no new requirements to the instrument. We've added no new requirements to the form. The place where we've had the add is in the companion policy, and we hope that this helps industry make preparation clearer and more easily done by this additional guidance. We're almost finished. This is our road to revision. People have suggested that we should have a regular revision process, and they said it should be done every 5 years. As you might see from this timeline, we started this in 2022 with our consultation paper. It took us through most of 2023 to decide that, yes, we did need to make some adjustments and clarifications. 2024, we put our heads down and did some of the work based on that feedback, based on all the other data from our internal reviews and the things that we publish publicly and the short courses that we offer and the feedback that we get. And then in 2025, we've shared this publicly with all of you and everyone else. And now we're at the point we're going to review and consider the comments. that final publication or enactment of any revisions that stay, because we will be reconsidering some, is unlikely. It would be very, 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 very aggressive for us to say that would happen in late 2026, particularly with 100 comment letters or more to go through. It is most likely that any revisions would be adopted in 2027. Right now, as I said, it looks like we're over 100 or about 100 comment letters. They are posted on the Ontario and the Quebec jurisdictions. They're the OSC and the AMF websites, and you can see them. Ontario is having a terrible time processing them all. I shouldn't say a terrible time. They just want to make sure they're formatted and readable. But those are available publicly. We will be publishing a summary of the comments for everyone. We will be publishing responses to those. And right now, it looks like the three areas that have received the most comments are the areas of we've made a change because there was a misplaced responsibility onto qualified persons to determine what was material information. We've suggested it should be relevant information. That's generated probably the most comments so far. The clarification that a QP's expertise is developed after registration, that 5 years post registration is the requirement. And the third one is on data verification. There's been a multitude of others, but those are the three highlights so far. I'm only through about 45 of the 100 comment letters, so those may change. That's the best I can do in the last week. And thank you so very, very much. And I think that's all I have. Oh, that's just another one. People ask. This is derived from Geoscientists Canada, which is the umbrella organizations for registering geoscientists, and in some cases engineers. It's joint ones. This area is when you receive your license, and when you prepare a certificate and a technical report, you demonstrate to the public that you have expertise. But with that, I'll try to stop sharing, and I'm sure there's a multitude of questions that people would like to ask.
Thank you so much, Victoria.
I have a question. It's Curtis. I'll ask it verbally.
Sure.
Uh, in relation to data verification,
Yep.
have you seen reports come across reports filed that have gone ahead and included data verification for things other than just, items 9 and 10, the geology and
Yes.
drilling?
Yeah, there's lots
Good.
of reports that do, Curtis, but they're definitely in the minority. We get a lot of we also get a lot of reports that believe when you talk about, say, QA/QC at a lab, in item 11, that that's data verification. But data verification's definition hasn't changed. It's what step did the qualified person take? So it's what did you do? And it doesn't say you have to repeat the data verification of others, but what steps did you do to make yourself more comfortable that it's suitable for the purposes, whether it be an early stage project or a more advanced project, a pre-feas or a feasibility study.
Yeah, and following on that, before you get to the other questions coming in, one thing that isn't stipulated or listed out would be geotechnical data, and that's so important for pit slope engineering, tailings dams, underground ground control, ground support, and heap leaches, heap leach design. So all of that has application now about what the engineering design is based upon.
Yeah, and that would be some of the things that may be disclosed under item 16. They might even be disclosed under item 18. And we've suggested in the companion policy that those are areas where the responsible qualified person might wish to disclose those steps, or in item 12. So yeah, we've just reminded people that this broad held opinion that data verification was only limited. We've actually had people say, because data verification is item 12, it only applies to things that are before item 12. So it's positional. So all we wanted to do was emphasize that there are other places where data verification may be required. And that's just practice. And again, we don't dictate practice. So it's whatever you're doing as a qualified person. One of the things we've said is anything that's a, sort of, instead of saying industry standards, standard to the industry. And everybody said, what did we mean by that? And they said there's no guidance on this and things like that. And a standard that, that's common to the industry, that doesn't seem to be written anywhere. It's not in the instrument, it's not in the form, it's not in companion policy discussion, it's not in best practice guidelines that I'm aware of. Most professionals, when they do a current personal inspection, take confirmation samples. That's not a requirement, that's just industry practice. That's what most individuals do. And that's not a requirement, a specific requirement anywhere, but it seems to be common practice that everyone seems to do. I'd say more than 90%, 90% of qualified persons do. And so I'm not sure that we need guidelines on this. I think professionals, when they have that demonstrated expertise, like they do either being a PGO or a PNG here in Canada, that, or if they have the qualifications out of the recognized professional associations in the United States or Australia, they know how to practice, and they know what they need to do, and it's up to them what they do to verify data and make them comfortable with the disclosure they're taking responsibility for. Long answer, sorry.
No, very good, very clear. Thank you.
I would like to comment on that. This is Patrick Williamson. It's like
Hi.
I work on Section 20, so I'm a QP with the MMSA, and I address the environmental, social, and permitting. And I have read a number of technical reports where the person doing, because Section 20, the QP has to cover a lot of different disciplines. It's a very wide range of topics. I
Yep.
have seen some really bad Section 20s where knowing the author and their technical competence in geochemistry, they have basically just done the skimpiest job you can imagine, done the wrong types of analyses, done inadequate analyses, and you know, what are people doing to make sure that the people who actually work on these are competent? Because I think that there are some incompetent people working on Section 20s.
That's great feedback. I'm going to say that one of the things that's unique to item 20 in environmental studies in particular is you can rely on other experts, but you're supposed to say why you're relying on that other expert, why you think they're an expert. So right now it's summarizing the components of environmental studies, and we're moving to list the components of our environmental studies that may be required by a permitting. The proposal is to move to a list, and Patrick, maybe that will address some of the problems that you've identified. And it's just a great reminder to everyone, not just because a technical report is filed on CEDAR Plus does not mean it's been reviewed. And if you do identify something that looks wrong to you in the disclosure and someone's done the wrong things, I would say reach out to the company that the disclosure has been done for and let them know about that. And then reach out to the individual who's responsible. We are we if it says, here's a summary of the environmental study, that should be there. We haven't identified item 20 because our proposal is to move to a listing rather than a summary of these things. We haven't proposed that data verification is required in that area, but for what you're talking about, Patrick, in previous reporting, it's probably a gap. But thank you very much for that feedback. Really appreciate it. Someone asked whether we can still send comments. You can. We had a longer comment period than normal. We normally have a standard 90-day comment period. We went to 120. We did accept a comment letter yesterday, but it's really running long. And as I say, it's getting difficult, or it is more difficult with the volume that we have to make these available publicly as they are on the Ontario and the Quebec websites.
Great. Another question we had from Jim is, with a greater emphasis on project rather than property, how do you see this meshing with CIM-VAL for the valuation of mineral properties?
SimVal is not incorporated into NI 43-101. The economic analysis that's done is we've had this conversation lots of times with a lot of people. SimVal and evaluation report is a document that's maybe required by the exchanges. It's not what a technical report under National Instrument 43-101 is supposed to be. So this is really no change. The National Instrument the National Instrument 43-101 doesn't recognize any valuation methodology. So this is not what comes into play here. SimVal, while the Canadian standard for valuation would be for a valuation report, which is separate and different to what a technical report is.
Great. I had a question for you, Victoria. You talked about needing to share recovery rates for other mineral grades presented. How much of an impact do you anticipate this will have on reports or the public's interpretation of a project?
Are you speaking with respect to metal equivalents?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, so what we're seeing most often is people just say, and we've assumed 100% recovery, which doesn't work. There's no process that assumes 100% recovery. As I mentioned, industry used to do a really good job of this. There is no standardized calculation for a metal equivalent. It should be based on your primary metal, if you will, the primary thing that you're recovering. And I do think that it is misleading to use 100% recovery because you're not going to get that. And so this is just a reminder, and going back to what it's used to be, I think it gives the public a better sense, because 100% recovery it will overstate the amount of metal. And so I think the public can be easily misled by that. So we're just reminding people that they should disclose it with, if in CIM best practice guideline says don't do it don't use a metal equivalent unless you actually have some met work, so you know what the recoveries are. We've been a little bit more flexible, that if you're using an analog deposit model, you could use something similar. So we're trying to be flexible in that regard, but we do want you to tell people that you're not going to recover 100% of whatever it is. Does that answer the question, Kristen?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
With that, many thanks to Victoria for her excellent presentation, and thank you to everyone who attended the webinar. All of our webinars are uploaded to YouTube and can be accessed through the MMSA.net website. The video of this webinar should be on the website within a week. We will post on our LinkedIn pages when the video and slides are posted on our website. Our next webinar will be on November 14th, slightly early due to the U.S. Thanksgiving holiday, by Dr. John Keller on tailings repurposing. We will post the PR for this next week on our website, LinkedIn, and Eventbrite. The MMSA webinars are supported by the MMSA Jackling Foundation. Again, if you're interested in becoming an MMSA member, please be sure to check out our website, mmsa.net, for information on the application process. The webinar is now ended. Thank you.